A new year yields a new beginning. Unless you're me looking at yet more old street circuits. Unfortunately, this series doesn't recognise the existence of calendars, or my mental well-being at having to look at several 90-degree corners. As far as it's concerned, it's stuck in a parallel time warp, continuously churning out no longer used street circuits and forcing me to analyse them. Despite this though, I hope you have a happy new year and that you enjoy whatever content this channel delivers over the next 366 days. Welcome to episode 45 of Street Track Failures, where today we're taking a look at Tamiami Park in Miami, which hosted 4 kart races as well as 2 big money exhibition style races from 1985 to 1988. It was held on an 11-turn course that was 1.7 miles / 2.8 kilometers in length, with 8 turns to the right and 3 to the left. This track would also have the honour of being the final venue for the kart series each year they raced at Tamiami Park. A day prior to the main race though, in 1987 and 1988, exhibition races would be held. I would go into more detail, but I'll probably save that for a future video. The course would be located, perhaps unsurprisingly, in Tamiami Park, a sports facility near a different park called University Park. Turn 1 was a long right sweeper, perhaps similar in nature to Turn 1 at Gateway, the only difference being that at Tamiami Park you have no banking whatsoever. The best line to take is of course to stay as close to the inside curb as possible, without actually touching it. A great corner this one, even in the wet, despite the large amounts of water that would sit on top of the surface. A track surface that was mostly asphalt, but did have some concrete sections. The other thing to note about Turn 1 is that it has a very wide entry. That though doesn't mean that you can get away with entering the corner 18 wide at the start of a race, because it isn't going to work, therefore creating absolute carnage. Coming out of Turn 1 is a short burst of acceleration towards Turn 2, where you might be able to make an overtake if you're far enough alongside. It's practically an open radius left-handed 90-degree corner, this one. Then coming out of Turn 2, it's important that you get onto the left-hand side of the track as quickly as you can, as Turn 3 comes up almost immediately, and you'll want to get as wide of an entry into the corner as possible, trying to maximise your speed on the exit of another 90-degree corner, this one though being a right-hander. After yet another short straight, it's onto a tight Mickey Mouse style section of corners. A sharp right-hander leads you directly into an even sharper left-hander, which in wet conditions was very treacherous in making sure that you delivered all the power to the road as smoothly as possible. Plus it would retain water quite well, meaning that if you wanted to go onto slick tyres, you may want to tread carefully through there. Oh, well, never mind. A much more open right-hander follows afterwards, where the speed begins to crank up, and you're into a fantastic selection of corners. Turn 7, a brilliant sweeping right-hander that is made all the more challenging by how it could almost be taken flat out. But whilst your car is full of fuel, a gentle lift is probably the wisest option. On the exit though, whilst the actual track width doesn't actually change, the walls suddenly come channeling in, mainly to cater for any spectators wanting to go from one side of the track to the other via this bridge. Now, you're probably thinking, what's so bad about that? Well, it does mean that if someone does have a spin and arrives uncontrollably back onto the track, there is less space to avoid said incident, therefore creating scenarios like this one. Although don't worry, all the drivers were okay in this incident. Then it's on to turns 8 and 9, a great sequence of corners. A fast right immediately followed by a left, creating an inadvertent chicane if you will. Once you exit turn 9, the best way for making sure you set yourself up right for turn 10 is by going as far as you can to the left. However, if you want to attempt an overtake, which the circuit is wide enough to accommodate for such a manoeuvre, then you can get on the gas slightly earlier than the car ahead of you to try and get on the inside and make a pass via a much more shallower line. Although passes weren't particularly common at this section, and when they were attempted, they generally ended up in contact and some disgruntled racing drivers. Once you exit yet another open radius 90-degree right-hander, it's foot to the floor, open the taps, full on the gas, smash the accelerator, any phrase used to describe go as fast down the straight as you can in your automobile, before you head to the last corner at turn 11, an utterly terrifying flat-out right-hander, where there is little room for a mistake. Don't clip the inside too much, or better still, don't clip the inside at all, because if you do, you'll hit a solid wall, and possibly ricochet into another solid wall not too long after that. And in the wet, it's just as terrifying. It's not flat out, thus meaning the speeds are a bit lower, but it still looks pretty nerve-jangling all the same. Afterwards is the start-finish straight. one of the shortest straights ironically on the circuit. But from there you finish your lap. It's also worth highlighting the pit lane on this track. Quite possibly the best we've had so far in this series. A wide open pit lane entry that allows drivers to enter it without causing any disruption on track, and an even better pit lane exit that follows the inside of the turn 1 sweeper, before merging wonderfully back onto the live racetrack, with once again no impact being had on the action on track, which is good to see. Now let's get on to why this track wasn't used beyond 1988. Well, the primary reason was that CART wanted the date of the race to be changed. In its current slot at the end of the season, the beginning of November was when the Grand Prix of Miami was held. CART wanted the date to be changed, also on account of the fact that the event had been impacted by rain for a fair number of those years. CART hoped that sometime in the spring or September would be an acceptable time slot on the calendar for Tamiami Park. Seems a reasonable enough suggestion on the surface. In response, promoter of the event, Ralph Sanchez, calmly said, "Nope," because spring was when another event he promoted in Florida for the IMSA series was held, while September was a dodgy month weather-wise for the state. And with no compromise being found, the event at Tamiami Park was off. Overall, I would say that this was not too bad of a circuit. I know that's not a particularly exciting or interesting way to summarise a track, but to be honest, I wouldn't describe it as dull, but at the same time I wouldn't say it was exciting either. Also, overtakes didn't seem to be all that common of an occurrence, which perhaps isn't surprising given the short straights between corners not creating heavy braking zones, and corners that, whilst wide, were not ones that made passing all that straightforward. It's very similar, I would say, to the Tampa circuit used by IMSA in the late 80s that I reviewed earlier in this series. The walls weren't alongside you the entire perimeter of the track, with a fair amount of grassy sections as well, even gravel traps were there. Basically, it's a shorter version of Albert Park before Albert Park in racetrack form ever existed. Anyway, that is going to be it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, then I would be enormously appreciative if you did hit the like and subscribe buttons. Plus, if you have any more street circuits that you'd like to see featured in this series, then say in the comment section down below. However, until the next video, be kind to each other and enjoy the rest of your day.